This is the Roy's Boys Podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast, powered by Carolina Electrical Services. For all your electrical needs, call Jacob Marlowe at 704-320-7357. Josh and Anthony back with you, and today we're going to discuss the season-ending loss to Auburn in the Sweet 16, a 97-80 defeat for Carolina, which ended their season prematurely. Overall, that was a very good year, though, a 29-7 record, 16-2 record in the ACC, the most ACC regular season wins in the history of the program. But ultimately, the season ended way too soon.
Yeah, I think you're right. Carolina just faced a team that was on fire, plain and simple. I mean, you hit 17 three-pointers in a game, also in which you forced 14 turnovers. 14 turnovers. You're not going to have a lot of success. Plain and simple. We knew coming in that turnovers would be a big factor. A stat that I didn't know initially going into the game, but that they said during the broadcast, which I thought would kind of hammer that point home even a little more, was that Auburn was the best points off turnover team in the country. And when you turn the ball over like Carolina did, 14's not an outlandish number because we've seen more turnovers this year, but I think it was the type of turnovers like you were talking about. There were not many that were dead ball turnovers, and really the timing of the turnovers were not where you needed them to be either. And I think Auburn they did exactly what they wanted to do. They said they wanted to run with Carolina. They did for a little bit, but once they realized that Carolina was going to score, if they did run, they slowed it down. Carolina really wasn't able to adjust on the offensive or defensive end the way that they've been able to do with some of the other teams that were able to slow them down. And overall, Auburn just played a better game, and they end up getting the win and moving on to the Elite Eight, where they showed that they were pretty legit by beating Kentucky, and now they're in the Final Four. So, you take away from what you must. I know there's some people that are saying, how do we lose to a team that's a 5 seed? But I think we're starting to see this team was probably underseeded.
Yeah, Auburn played as good as a second half as a team's probably played all year against Carolina. And I think it was a lot like last year where they ran into a bad matchup and it just snowballed. This year it wasn't the interior size that it was last year against A&M. This year it was Auburn has 2 really good guards that we had a hard time staying in front of, and when they get hot, there's no one in the country that can shoot with those 2 guys. Mm-hmm. And then also you got the guy, Chuma Okeke he was the difference in the game because Carolina had nothing for him. And we knew going into the game he was going to be a handful, and he proved to be every bit of that. And we pray that he has a good and healthy recovery, because I think it was a torn ACL is what the official diagnosis was.
Right, torn ACL, yep.
Hated to see the injury happen. But he was really, as good as Harper and those guys were, he was the difference because he was getting the ball inside, but then stepping out hitting threes. Kind of what we want Luke May to do for us. It just didn't happen. And it's really a lot of credit to Bruce Pearl, because he coached a well of a game, had an excellent game plan, like you said. Once they learned, okay, running with Carolina isn't going to work, and they made it a half-court game, they just executed. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing we've worried about all year long, is when the game slows down, and the execution in the half-court for this offense has dwindled. Really, since the first Duke game in Cameron, the numbers just haven't been as good. We wondered when would it catch up to us. It caught up to them in the ACC tournament, and then it caught up to us in March, or in the NCAA tournament at the wrong time. And it was just frustrating because, we looked primed for a really deep run. And even though a Sweet 16 isn't a failure for a lot of programs, for this program it is. When you're co-champion in the ACC, you're expected to go further than this in March, and we just ultimately didn't get it done. Really had to pick the wrong day to have a bad shooting night, which was another question. Could we win a game in the tournament when we didn't shoot the ball well? And ultimately the answer was no. But I thought the thing that really was the most discouraging thing for me that was early and was, that really got on my nerves was we didn't have the type of effort on the rebounding glass that we needed to have. Auburn's one of the worst rebounding Power 5 teams in the country, and we out-rebounded them by 4. If we out-rebounded them by 10 or 15, that might have offset the bad shooting night and their hot shooting night. But ultimately, Carolina didn't give the effort and the rebounding that they needed to have.
I thought that was the big difference in the first half, was them on the offensive glass, keeping their opportunities alive. And, that was one of the things that I think we all realized coming in. And I mean, the players and coaches probably realized it too, but really they just didn't execute. The players didn't. You knew there were going to be long rebounds in this game, because when you're a three-point shooting team, a lot of your rebounds are going to come back to the outside because of the length that you're shooting from. Carolina let up way too many long rebounds, and I mean, you mentioned Okeke. That was one of the main things that he did early on in the game that I think helped Auburn out immensely. The difference in this game, though, was this was a 2-point game at halftime. Auburn comes out and hits 3 straight threes to open the second half. That's when you knew you were in trouble. And Carolina just never recovered. They had one time where they got it back to a 6-point game when it was 60-54. And a timeout was called by Auburn. And then from that point on, Carolina could never get it back below 10 points. And Auburn, of course, pulls away late, makes the score look a little bit worse than it probably actually was. But I think at that point, pretty much, I think once we got to about the under 8, I think just about everybody could see it, that there was just no way they were going to be able to claw their way back into it, because even if they would string together consecutive buckets, I mean, Carolina, I thought, for the most part, showed better effort defensively in the second half. Auburn was just making shots.
Yeah.
I mean, they were making everything they were looking at, especially from deep. And, they talked about it on the broadcast. One of the adjustments that was made in the first half, I think Carolina was trying to take away the outside shooting. So they were playing as close to the 3-point line as they could play. And that was what was allowing the guards, particularly Bryce Brown, to just drive by and finish at the rim. In the second half, Carolina tried to make the adjustment of taking away the drive and forcing them to knock down threes. It just so happened that Auburn was ready to go in that department and was knocking down just about anything that they were looking at in that second half. So I think anything that could have gone wrong for Carolina went wrong for Carolina. Garrison Brooks had his worst defensive game maybe of his entire career. Just looked lost at moments out there on rotations, and switches were just nowhere to be found on screens. I mean, you had guys that were doubling a guy at the top of the key, and you had a guy wide open on the wing. So I think that's something that, I don't know what happened. It's just one of those bad games. It just so happened that it came in the tournament. But, I don't think it should take away from what this team did in the regular season. I think this is still an accomplished team, not one that a lot of people will probably say, deserve to win a title, although there are some people that are classifying them with the 2012 team, the 84 team. So I don't know if they're quite in that area, but I do think that this team is still one of the more talented ones to go without a championship, and definitely provided some good memories, but it didn't finish out the way we wanted it to.
Yeah, just some other quick notes. We're going to have a season-ending show maybe next week. We're going to let the Final Four conclude and the season conclude. And we'll look back on the year that was 2018, 2019. Like you said, it was very fun and gave us a lot of memories. I do think that I wish Roy Williams would have went zone a little bit more. I know he threw it out there 2 possessions, and I know Auburn hit 2 threes on those 2 possessions, and I know that's discouraging, but I just thought maybe you just stick with it. It throws them off, and maybe something happens, because they got cold in the first half, and maybe it wouldn't have. But I just wish that maybe he would have stuck with that a little bit other than that. But, he called a timeout, which he doesn't normally do, and we saw him get very animated on really every starter, and then Nazir Little on the bench. And so,
right.
It wasn't that it wasn't a narrative that, normally when we lose games, Roy Williams was a bonehead, didn't call timeout, didn't make adjustments, he didn't coach his guys hard enough. That was the most animated I've seen him in the tournament in a very long time. And he called a timeout, which when he called, I looked at you and I said, what is he doing? I'm not a fan of the timeout. So I was immediately discouraged right there. And I just don't know, and I mentioned this to my dad, I just think maybe they were mentally and physically spent. And then you add in, and we're not going to use the flu-like symptoms as an excuse on this podcast.
You got beat by 17. That's not an excuse.
But, okay, your two better players weren't feeling up to par. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, Kobe White and those guys didn't do enough to make up for Cam and Nazir being sick. And I just think it was just one of those kind of like last year when it got ugly, we just kind of folded. And I think this year, for some reason, they weren't mentally tough enough when the going got tough in a single elimination tournament. We caved, and that was ultimately the season.
Right.
It's disappointing, but look, how many times are you going to win a game when you shoot 43% and then you're 25% from three, and that's your strength because you can't dump the ball inside consistently? You're not going to win many games like that. The fact that they won a lot of games towards the end of the regular season with those kind of numbers because they were really good defensively for a really long stretch of the season. They weren't very good defensively Friday night. And like I said, a lot of that, you got to give credit to Auburn. Their game plan was spectacular. Their floor spacing was as good as I've seen from any team against Carolina all year long. They knew how to spread our defense and to get into the seams and the gaps, penetrate. And like you said, we took away the drive. We wanted them shooting threes. Maybe we should have wished for something different because they were knocking down guarded threes from 10 feet behind the 3-point line. I mean, they were like Steph Curry in one for that 20 minutes.
Whoa! Wasn't Carson Edwards okay? Come on.
So just. I don't know what it is with SEC teams, but the last 2 years they've had our number, and it's just, don't think we expected to have a Sweet 16 recap podcast with it being our season being over.
By the way, did you see in the Elite Eight matchup that the Kentucky fans, despite losing the game, chanted SEC afterwards? So they're just rallying together as a conference, and, even if they lose.
Kind of like we're supposed to pull for Duke when Duke.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Can we discuss that, by the way? The Shane Ryan guy that decided to try and tell Bryce Johnson that he knows nothing about the Duke-Carolina rivalry, which I get that he's probably trolling. But this guy actually made I don't know if you saw this yesterday.
I saw the graphic.
He actually created these fake accounts and tweeted all this stuff out. If you notice, if you look at some of them, it's the same tweet over again. And the names are very, very similar. So we have found ourselves a psychopath, ladies and gentlemen. This man needs clinical help. And I know there are Tar Heel fans that have clinical practices. Please DM this man and see if he needs help, because we do think he may be a danger to himself. But, no, back to the game. Back to the focus on Auburn. Look, they're in the Final Four, and I know there's a lot of people that are saying, "Well, they're a 5 seed. How good really are they?" I saw that multiple times on Twitter.
They beat
the other
Kansas,
night.
North Carolina, and Kentucky in consecutive games. No one else has ever done that in the history of the tournament. The only team that's ever done that ever besides them was 1997 Arizona. And guess what that team did?
Won a national championship.
Won a national title.
That was before Sean Miller got there, so they actually knew how to get over the hump.
This was a team that was preseason top 10. And I had my doubts about.
They got up to what, 7th? I think was the highest that they got up to early in the season.
I had my doubts about them because of their style. Didn't think it parlayed to success away from home, and it didn't. And I didn't think it would parlay to success in the tournament. But kind of like Virginia, this year it worked. With the draws they got, with the opponents they got, with Kansas not being Kansas of old, with Carolina still really good, but not what you typically see from Carolina. And then Kentucky, you got a bunch of freshmen. You don't know what you're ever going to get from them.
Right.
It just seemed to work this year. But also it just proves Bruce Pearl can really, really coach. And he doesn't need to do all the bull crap he does behind the scenes that's got him in a lot of trouble, because he doesn't need to cheat to win. Because he's won at Tennessee that doesn't care about basketball, and now he's won at Auburn, who cares even less about basketball. So that's one thing I hate about it.
That's a good point, yeah.
He's a really doggone good coach. He's just got a lot of baggage that that you can't look past.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what people, when they try to say that we got beat by a coach that's really not that good, it's like, that's not really true. He's just, the reason you think that is because of all the baggage. You're right. Most people don't think of Bruce Pearl as a great coach. Bruce Pearl, with the run that he's having this year, sort of reminds me a little bit from his perspective as a coach of Frank Martin a couple of years ago at South Carolina. The overall team run reminds me of Connecticut back in 11, where they won 4 games in 4 days in the SEC tournament, and now that's just carried over. And we talked about it when we previewed this Midwest region that they won. We said, the problem with Auburn is that they're a jump shooting team. Will it actually work for 6 games? Well, I'll be damned. It's worked for 4. Right. We have 2 to go. I don't know if it's going to work against Virginia. And I can't tell you in a national championship game. I think on a bigger stage, we'll see. I think there will be some nerves. But here's my thing about what they did. I thought the other day against Kentucky, okay, now they started out slow. I was like, here we go. Now they're going to cool off. And, of course, this is when they're going to slow down and lose this game. But the other thing about Auburn that I just don't think a lot of people talk about is they are a really surprising defensive team. They've got good enough guys inside. I mean, Horace Spencer is 3rd all-time in blocks in what, SEC history, or is that Auburn history? I think it might be Auburn history. But he's a rim protector, and we saw that a couple of times with our guys trying to drive to the basket. I mean, we saw it a couple of times with Cam Johnson. Kobe White got inside a time or two and got blocked. And, also, I mean, their activeness on the defensive end really put some pressure on our young point guard in Kobe White and even our veteran point guard in 7th Woods, and they forced turnovers. Yeah. So you got to hand it to them. That team is a lot better than I think people realized. And, I mean, look, right now, I don't know if you can really bet against them in this game against Virginia. I don't know who you're betting, but the line's 5.5. I think it'll probably be closer than that just because they do what will affect Virginia, which is shoot the 3 very well. So it's a legitimate team. I think Carolina, like you said, they ran into a buzzsaw. This team's hot right now. And Carolina was hot too before that loss in the ACC tournament semifinal. But I don't know, man. There's something about this Auburn team. They're feeling it right now. And expect now with the injury to Okeke, they might have a little bit of extra motivation. I mean, losing him's going to hurt, but we'll see what it ends up parlaying into. Now, this is a question that I wanted to ask you. A lot of people have this. So who are you rooting for in the game, in that game? The first game, right? It'll be Auburn and Virginia are the ones that kick it off. Yeah. Who are you pulling for? Are you actually pulling for Auburn, or are you going to pull for Virginia? Because there's some people that are saying we need to pull for the ACC, and why would we pull for Auburn? They beat us. Then there's other people that are like, well, you pull for Auburn to make us look better, and you pull for Auburn because we don't like Virginia.
I hate Virginia.
Okay, I wanted to see your perspective on
we'll definitely pull for Auburn to win the game, and then of course in the second game I will be a Texas Tech fan.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, I want to win the national. I want Texas Tech to cut down the net. I do think Virginia will ultimately cut them down.
Right.
It just they got there. They feel destined. But if them and Michigan State could be an all-time final, it might be the first one to 50 wins.
Yeah.
But there could be some fun there to have. And look, we're not going to look at that Final Four because we're not in it.
Of course.
I'm going to sit down and we'll watch both the games Saturday and of course the final on Monday. But we're just going to go ahead and wrap this thing up because I don't want to talk anymore about this frustrating loss.
By the way, did you want to the news from earlier today?
I got you.
Yeah, okay.
Season's over. It sucks. It's going to be another long off season wondering what could have happened if we found a way to get to the regional final and then maybe, of course, made the Final Four, but it wasn't meant to be. And with that, there was, of course, after the season was over, we're losing Kenny, Luke, and Cam, so the speculation is what are Kobe and Nazir going to do? Nazir wasted no time. Said today he's declaring for the NBA draft. Not shocking, because he is and according to ESPN, he is a top, I think he's still in their top 13 or the top 16 at least, so has the potential to be a lottery pick. And now, as far as I know, this is not an April Fool's joke because today is April 1st. This appears to be the final decision of his, and just want to let you guys know that he won't be back. He is a one and done. So there, Roy Williams recruited a one and done since the first time since Tony Bradley, which is only 2 years ago. And now we will await Kobe's decision, which I thought we would wait for Nazir, so we could have something from Kobe very soon. And this means there's a lot pending on the recruiting trail with the decisions of Cole Anthony pending. We'll find out supposedly this weekend. Matthew Hurd is supposed to commit in later April, and then Precious, I don't know if he has set a date or not, but we're in the running for him. Many people think we're the favorite because of the problems going on at Kansas to get his services.
And he's a small forward, is he not? Forward. So he's gonna that could be huge now with Nazir gone.
But so with those, just want to let you guys know that, and just hate that the season ended in this way, but hey, we were here from the first tip to the last tip, and we'll be with you all off season. Got some stuff lined up. We'll have some fun. We're going to recap the season as a whole, then we'll go player by player, and maybe we'll have some fun topics to discuss over the summer. Just just some fun topics to have, and maybe see there should be some updates on a new facility with the basketball program, whether it's renovating the Smith Center or beginning a whole new arena. We're supposed to make it something maybe in the next couple months about that, and that'll be fun to talk about. So I want to thank you guys for listening. You know where to find the podcast: Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. You can find the final blog post. The blog is going away for a little while. That's on Medium, Facebook, and Twitter. Anthony, thank you for joining me. Guys, thank you for listening. Go Tar Heels.